Hey guys, I'm Sam, and I'm a slut for fantasy novels. And so is my cat, whose name is Daenerys. So you know I love a fantasy time. So today I'm talking about my favorite overall fantasy books. I did include some of my favorite fantasy books in my last video, the gay fantasy romance video. So if you haven't seen that one, what are you doing? Go watch it. But for this one, I'm going to talk about my favorite overall fantasy. The first book that I want to talk about is one that makes me embarrassed because of how much I like it. And it's The Goblin Emperor by Katherine Addison. The thing that I love about this book is the main character, really. It's sort of like a political fantasy about this guy, Maya, who's half elf, half goblin in an elf world. And he's very much discriminated against for being half goblin. His father is the elf emperor, and his dad sucks. His dad sucks ass. And so his dad hates him and has banished him to live with this awful caretaker who's super abusive towards him, and it's just a really bad situation. But then karma comes for the dad, okay? The dad dies in an airship accident that also kills all of Maya's brothers. So now, even though he's been like ostracized and discriminated against his entire life, now he's suddenly the emperor. And so it's a lot about him kind of like figuring out what to do. And let me tell you something about Maya, okay? He is my sweet baby boy. He's my little angel. He is my son. I have to protect him at all costs. And I love Maya so much because he's just such a sweetheart, and he's really out here just trying his best. Like, he's just a good person trying his best in a chaotic situation that he doesn't really understand. And you get to watch all of the other characters fall in love with him too. Even though, listen, you're in love with him from the jump, okay? You don't have to worry about falling in love with Maya. You will immediately. But you get to see all the other characters sort of like fall in love with him too. And that's very nice to see because you're like, see guys, that's my baby angel and he's perfect and he's never done anything wrong in his life. So definitely I recommend this book. It's got a lot of like very confusing names, but you get into it, okay? You just get into it. You get into it. Even if you can't read the name, you get into it, okay? Even if you don't know what they're talking about, you get into it. And if you read the book 10 times like I did, then eventually, you'll get it. You'll get everything. And I love that book so much. There is like a spin-off series about one of the other characters called The Witness for the Dead. And I kind of read it a little bit, but like I couldn't get into it because here's the thing. It focuses on a different character who isn't Maya. And so Maya's not in those books. So I was like, okay, why would I read them? Like, I get it. The world is great. The characters are great. But, like, I miss my son, So definitely check that one out. The next book that I want to talk about is called A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. And this is the first book in an amazing series, the Shades of Magic series. And I love it so much. It kind of focuses on Kel, who's an Antari, which means that he can travel between worlds. And every world that you travel to has a city named London, okay? You just have to accept that. So we've got Grey London, which is the London that's here on Earth, but like in the past. And then you have Red London, which is like fun, magical, like you want to go to Red London. Like that's the one you really want to live in. And that's the one where Kel is from. And he's sort of been like adopted by the royal family there because of his powers that he has. And when he travels to Grey London, he meets Lila Bard, who's just like a normal woman, but she's so funny and cool and just like a great edgy character. And the two of them develop a friendship. And I think that's really the relationship that kind of makes the story so great. So if you look through here, you can see, I got the edition with pictures, okay? I got the fancy one. This is Kel, ooh, and this is Lila, And then you've got these guys who live in White London and they're evil. And White London is like the scary London, okay? It's the London you don't want to go to. And then we have all these other characters, like you've got Kel and Rye, who Rye is like sort of his adopted brother. And then this guy, Holland, is the Antari from White London, the sad London. So you really get to see all this cool like magic, and it's got a like sense of humor to it and a sense of adventure, and it's so much fun. So if you haven't read it, definitely get into it. A new trilogy is coming out called like The Threads of Power that takes place in the same world and I believe features some of the same characters. I have to read that entire series again before I can start the next book because I gotta make sure I remember everything when I get into it. So the next book that I'm going to talk about is a classic. It's Howls Moving Castle. This book is so much fun. It's technically a children's book, but I love it. It's for me. It's about this girl, Sophie, who gets cursed by a witch and turned into an old woman. And now that she's an old woman, she's like, well, now I got to figure out how to break this freaking curse. So she's very nonchalant about it, honestly. Like, I would be a little more freaked out if I was her, but she's like, okay, whatever. I just got to figure this out. And she stumbles across Howl's Moving Castle, which, you know, it's the castle that moves. And she meets Howl, who's a wizard, who's like very flamboyant and just like super wild and quirky. And as she kind of like gets to know him and becomes a part of his world, then the two of them sort of like form this unlikely friendship, and then maybe more. So yeah, I love this book. I love all the characters in it. And while the movie adaptation is very popular, I read the book first. And so when I watched the movie, I was like, what the fuck is this? You know, I watched it and I was so confused because Hayao Miyazaki, I don't know if he read the book. I think maybe he read like the first 20 pages of the book and then was like, I'm just gonna make it up from there. Because it's so different from the book that I was like, why not just make a different movie? Like, why even call it Howl's Moving Castle? Like, why not just make it its own thing? Because it was so different. I couldn't believe it. So definitely read the book. I know people love the movie and people are going to come for me because they love the movie, but the book is way better, so you should definitely give it a read. The next book that I want to talk about has a very similar vibe. It's called Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I was obsessed with this book from the jump because it's about Emily Wilde, who's an autistic icon and loves fairies, loves researching fairies and writing about fairies, and is basically just this overall expert on fairies. That's her special interest. That's her favorite thing. Emily goes to research all the fairies in this one area and sort of get a full picture of like the fairy culture there so that she can write about it in her encyclopedia. And her co-worker slash friend, Wendell Bamblebee, just sort of like shows up to join in. And it's very obvious that Wendell has a crush on her, but she doesn't pick up on it at all, which, you know, I don't pick up on that kind of thing either. So like, I feel you, Emily. She's very focused on the fairies. So she is not realizing that this man is in love with her. And they kind of go on all these like wacky adventures together where she gets to learn all this new information about Wendell and who he really is and where he comes from and his secret past. Yeah, Danny loved this book. It was her favorite. It was her favorite book to chew on also. But yeah, 10 out of 10, would highly recommend. I honestly want to reread it right now. And I'm excited because the sequel is coming out in January of this next year. And ooh, baby, give it to me. I can't wait to get my little paws on it. So those are 4 of my overall favorite fantasy novels, period. So definitely check those out if you haven't read them before. And if you haven't seen my gay fantasy romance video, go check that out too, because those are also some of my favorite fantasy books. So thank you guys for watching, and have a great rest of your day. Enjoy yourself. Okay, bye.